So, starting right away with a message from Anthony. So, happy birthday, Anthony. Very nice. So, stage fright. Stage fright's a very complicated issue because it's what I say. The reason I say it's complicated is because each individual has a different, uh, a different trigger or whatever you want to call it. We all have different things. Now, I went through the whole stage fright thing myself. Um, and it's crazy, right? Because it happens sometimes, it doesn't happen other times. And it seems like there's no rhyme or reason for it. And so in my career, right, in the early stages, um, I would have these great performances, and then out of the blue, for what seemed like no reason at all, I would crash and burn. And that went on until I was about 35 years old. I had these kind of issues my whole career up until I was about 35. And now they happen less often. As I got older, they happened less often, but it wasn't until I had a revelation about my own life. And this is why I say that it's complicated, because I don't believe that, there's a lot of weird stuff people got me to do in the effort to get rid of stage fright, and I think part of it has to do with this false idea that stage fright is a thing, and this is the answer to that thing, right? And it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. Each individual person has their own triggers that cause these things to happen. And so, for example, there were people that tried to get me to relax. That's the first one anyone ever told me, right? Relax. And one guy said that I should. There's a bunch of these, right? Imagine everybody in the audience is naked. That's one of the first ones I ever heard as a fix for stage fright. With my personality, that was not a very good. That's like that would make it worse. I can tell you that. That would make it worse. What else was there? Imagine that you're on a paradise island, right? And that's so. The first one is an effort to get you to see them as being more vulnerable than you, right? Because that's what nakedness is. Nakedness is vulnerability. So when you imagine that the people in the audience are more vulnerable than you, in other words, naked, then I guess for some people this helps them not be nervous. But what if that's not why you're nervous, right? You see what I'm saying? There isn't a plug and play answer to stage fright. So the other one, the relaxed thing, is supposed to deal with the symptoms of stage fright. And I had something like that. So my symptom of stage fright was not tension. So it was relaxing wouldn't help, right? My symptom was that I would get a dry mouth, which I guess is indirectly related to tension, because the tension around the saliva glands, if the muscles around the saliva glands get tense, then you can't get saliva in your mouth. Okay? But let me tell you that relaxing doesn't make that any better. So what I used to do is chew gum. Not just any gum. They used to have, back in the old days, I used to chew gator gum, which had this the salts and stuff in it, the same as Gatorade, right? Um, Instead of Gatorade, it's gator gum. I used to chew that enough to get saliva, and then when I played, I would put it over here in my cheek while I'm playing, and then during any rest, I would pull it out, chew it again, and stick it back in there. And that was a workaround, and it got me through high school. It got me through college. But a workaround isn't a cure. It doesn't fix the problem. For me specifically, what I had to do, what I had to learn to do, was forgive people. Now, I've had other students, so this is one of the things I'm known for helping people with, is the stage fright stuff. I've had other students where the whole forgiveness thing wasn't an issue. So what worked for me isn't going to work for them. And in fact, I'm convinced, now that we're talking about it, I'm convinced that 90% of the people I work with, and I'm not going to try to say that that's 90% of the world, right? Because I recognize that the way I have my lessons set up, I'm going to attract certain types of people. Okay, I'm not going. So my sampling pool, if I'm just using my students as a sample, is not representative of the whole population. Okay, so I am not saying that it's 90% of everybody out there. I'm saying 90% of the people that I work with. Stage fright is something they practiced into their music. Let that sink in. 90% of the people I work with, stage fright was something they practiced into the music. They could have avoided the whole thing if they had avoided certain habits when they practice. Now, what kind of habits am I talking about? Being emotional in your practice time. You cannot, okay, so here's my thing, right? You know that old saying that you are what you eat, right? You can say the same thing about your practice time. Let me close some of these windows. I'm concerned that it will interrupt my feed. Sorry about that. Okay. You can say the same thing about practice time. Whatever you do in practice, you cannot reasonably expect it to not be any different on stage. And if you are an emotional practicer, if you let yourself get triggered when you're practicing, how do you expect yourself to not be triggered on stage? Right? So there's people who, when they're practicing, they'll go, da, 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 right? They're practicing, and then they'll make a mistake. They'll hit themselves. It's these, I call them musical temper tantrums, right? I call them musical temper tantrums. And they happen all kinds of ways. You can stamp your feet, you can hit yourself, you can grunt. Now let me ask you, if you allow yourself to be emotionally reactive to what you're doing in the practice time, how can you possibly expect yourself on stage to not react emotionally? I hope that makes sense. So this is a topic that I have a book that I want to write. I've been collecting notes for about 3 years now. Right now, I'm writing the other book. I'm writing the 7 Stages book. That's a book. I'll tell you what, it ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would be. I thought this was going to be like a pamphlet that I could hand out to the students, and it's already over 110 pages. I'm almost done, so it's not going to be much more than 110 pages. But I wanted to write this book first because my students need this book the most, and then I was going to do my after that I wanted to do the wholesome priorities, which should not be a whole 110 pages. And then after wholesome priorities, I wanted to do the stage fright book. Okay. Because there's stuff that I have to share that I've never heard anyone share before. And this is one of them. This thing about the allowing yourself to be emotional while you practice. And allowing yourself, you know what I tell my students? I say that when you're practicing, it's just business. It's just business. So you're practicing and you make a mistake. First of all, I don't believe in stopping. Right? This is what I'm saying. You know, if we're taught erroneously, we're taught that if you make a mistake, stop and fix the mistake. And I agree with that only to the point where we want to stop the process. First of all, if you're practicing and you don't have a process, you're just trying to get the music right. And you're not using a practice system. That has make me nervous all over it. Okay? That's the first thing you want to do. And that's, by the way, that's one of the reasons why this book that I'm writing on now is first, because I'm going to be referencing this 7 stages book in the other books. Because I believe that if you follow these 7 stages, you're less likely to get nervous. Because of this that I'm talking about, right? If you don't have a organized system for learning music, then you're reduced to just trying harder, right? You're reduced to just putting more effort, right? And that's just ridiculous. More effort doesn't make you play better, right? So if you have a system for learning the music, then you can be just matter of fact and treat it just like business. So you, and what I'm talking about here, this is a tangent, I'm talking about what you should stop. You don't stop the music, never. That's another very important part. You don't stop the music, never, never, never stop the music. So if you, in your mind, you're saying, I'm going to play the first 8 bars of the song, you do not stop until you're done with the 8 bars. Now, if your process was, I'm going to play the 8 bars 10 times, you stop that process. You don't go to if that was your 3rd time playing the 8 bars and you made a mistake, you don't go to the 4th time. Finish what you were doing. Don't go to the 4th time. That's what we mean. Well, that's what we should mean when we say, when you make a mistake, stop and fix it. That's what we should mean. Okay? It's not that we should stop the music. We never, ever, ever stop the music. Whatever it was that you were thinking, I'm going to go this far, that's how far you go, no matter what kind of mistakes happen. And if your practice time doesn't have that, how do you expect yourself in the performance to not stop because something went wrong? Right? So this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So if you have a system that you're using if you have a system that you're using to learn the music, you can turn the emotional stuff completely off. You don't have to, quote unquote, try harder. Try harder is where that emotional reaction stuff comes from. Okay? If you believe that the music gets better because you tried harder, that's emotional. And when stuff doesn't go right, you're going to react emotionally to it. And you can't turn that off. If that's how you practice, you can't turn that off in the performance. So you're set that, and that's what I mean by practicing stage fright into the music. If that's how you practice, you almost will not be able to. You're completely unable to avoid stage fright on stage. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now I know you didn't ask a question; you just made a statement that you had stage fright. But this is one of my topics, right? This is one of the things that I'm very, very good at teaching, the stage fright stuff. Um, and it really is an individual thing. I'm not suggesting just because 90% of my students, that's the problem that they have. Number one is that they don't use the system when they practice the music, right? They don't use the system. They just try harder. And trying harder has built into it stage fright. That's how this works. Okay? So I'm not suggesting that that's what's happening to you. I can't know that. This is that. I put a video out recently saying that people will sometimes put stuff on, ask questions, and I can't answer the questions because I don't know them. I don't know how they play. I don't know what they sound like, and just a few words in a sentence is not going to give me an idea of what's going on with their playing. So I'm not. So don't think that what I'm saying about stage fright applies to you directly. This is just something I like talking about. Partly because I got through it. For me personally, it had to do mostly with forgiveness. And I thought I was a forgiving person, right? But for me personally, when I went on gigs, there were things I was unforgiving about, specific things. And those specific things would come back and manifest themselves in my performance. And so in the end, the way I got rid of my stage fright was to become more forgiving of certain things. Nobody is completely forgiving at everything. There is none that are good, no, not one, right? Not a single person in this entire world can say he forgives everybody. So, anyone who says that is exaggerating, right? Anyway, well, happy birthday again, Anthony. It's great to hear from you. Let's look at the next question. I've always wondered, can a pro sound just as good on a beginner trumpet as on a professional trumpet? How much of a difference or an excuse is the quality of your equipment? It depends on what you mean by just as good. If a pro picks up, let's say a pro goes to your high school and takes an instrument. So let's say out of all, most high schools have around 16 trumpet players in the one band or whatever. Let's say the worst instrument out of the whole band, trumpet, the pro were to take that person's trumpet and demonstrate for you, I guarantee you that you won't hear a difference. So the answer to your question depends on who's listening, okay? It depends on who's listening. Not all ears are equal, okay? We don't all hear the same way. People who go to college, most of what they're educating in college is their ears. And now you take it to the professional level, you're even going farther than that because that's what those guys do for a living. It's all in their ears. It's all in what they can hear. Right? So yeah, one pro listening to another pro on a different instrument, we can tell. But can the audience tell? The answer is usually no, not at all. I hope that answers the question. It also depends on what kind of player he is. or she is. Okay? It depends on what kind of player. If you are, for example, an orchestral player, the instrument, well, let's not say orchestral. You know what? If you're the kind of trumpet player that plays to the center of the pitch and gets the instrument to resonate, then the instrument itself does make more of a difference. So, for example, you know it's become such a joke online about heavy caps, heavy valve caps. It's become such a joke. But the truth is, if you play to the center of the pitch, if you make your instrument resonate, perfect resonance, the weight of the trumpet makes a difference. Now, it's not necessarily a difference that untrained ears can hear, but it's a difference that trained ears, people who listen for a living, those people are going to hear a difference. Okay, now here's the question: heavy caps, good difference or bad difference? That's a matter of opinion. Now, here's also, if you don't play in a resonant fashion, if the way you play is not resonant, you don't play to the center of the pitch, those weighted caps are a complete waste of money. Let that sink in. If you don't play, now the reason when I first started talking about this, I said if you're an orchestral player. Why did I say that? Because usually to be that good as an orchestral player, you have to play with a resonant sound. You don't have to play resonantly to be a jazz player or a commercial player. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Alex Foster, welcome. I'm doing a trumpet choir on the seventh part. Is my father? Oh, and my okay. Any tips how to make it good? Let's see. Let me open up my. Wow, glad to hear you guys are doing that piece. You know, that was a. Let me tell you about that piece, because I got a. I haven't done this in a while, but so when I wrote that, I wasn't trying to write an arrangement, and I was writing I was writing an original composition for 7 trumpets, and I was writing it and clicking the playback button on the computer, and I'm like, this sounds familiar. What is this? What am you know? And so I don't remember how I figured it out, but somehow I figured out that that it was the melody I was writing was only like one note off from this hymn, and so I decided, okay, so that's messed up. I can't publish something like that as an original. So I went back, I changed the notes that would make it exactly like the hymn, and finished the arrangement, which, like I said, it started off as an original composition, and what I wrote was so very similar to this hymn that I just changed it and made it just the hymn. That's the only time in my whole life that that's ever happened. Anyway, I'm looking at your part now. So, I think out of all of the parts, this one has the broadest range. So you're playing a lot of low Gs, but you also at times have the higher notes. So you have a 2-octave range in this piece. So, and at C, you have the bass line, and that has to come out. So I'm going to say that I think the most important thing for you is to have a nice big fat sound on those low notes. But now here's the problem with getting a big fat sound on the low notes, but also having to do this other stuff, is you have to reset. You have, at B, you have the melody. At B, you have the melody, and then here, this thing with the long notes, you've got, between B and C, you have one G that lasts 4.5 measures. That's also an extremely important part of this arrangement. So I would say do not cheat that. If you have to turn measure 37, turn that half note into a quarter note and take a huge breath so that you don't have to cheat that long note there, I would strongly recommend doing that, because that note is what makes the arrangement sound the way it does. Okay, but the other part is just making sure. Now, there's a tendency on these low notes to play flat. Okay, and especially if they're marked forte and double forte on those low notes. Okay, and there's a big tendency to play flat there. I would strongly recommend having the tuner open, and at least when you practice. I don't mean in a performance. Don't do that in a performance. Okay, use your ears in the performance. You should use your ears all the time, but sometimes we get so overwhelmed with trying to play big and low and loud that we let the pitch go down. And you'll just want to make sure you're not doing that. I would say that's the most important thing there. Well, I'm thrilled that you guys are playing this. So, if you're still on, do you mind telling me what ensemble this is, or what is it? A school? Is it a church? And where is it at? So I just know for my own sake where you guys are playing this. So anyway, so I did have one question that was asked earlier in the week about, and this is what we're going to talk about right now real quick. Someone asked, how do you, what do you do if in your section? So this was on a video. Let me clarify it real quick. This was on a video about how good you play is a choice you make. Let's see if I can pull this up. I'll put a link in the comments to this video. And the video is about how every choice you make when you're practicing determines how good you're going to be. That's the basic theme behind the video. Okay, it's not loading. So maybe later I'll remember to put it up. But yeah, the video was about how the choices you make are what makes you a great player. It's not just something that just happens to you. Well, someone asked on that video, what do you do? Oh, solo and ensemble. Hey, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful. That's what, when we write music like that, that's like the biggest honor for people to choose to do the music that we wrote, when there's so much other great music out there. You can't believe what kind of an honor that is. So thank you very much for playing my music in your solo ensemble. Wow, that's great. All right, so the question is, what do you do? What do you do when your classmates, when you're, let's say you're in a trumpet section and the other guys aren't trying hard enough? What if they're not pulling their own weight? What do you do? So my video was about what you're supposed to do about your own playing. What do you do if the other guys in the section aren't pulling their own weight? They're not trying hard enough. Okay? And my answer to that might be a little bit confusing. So let's take a step back. First of all, I believe in roles. I believe in roles more now than I ever have, thanks to things that are going around on in our world today. So my answer to you depends on what your role is. Are you the section leader? Well, you have a different role from everybody else in the section if you're the section leader. If you're the section leader, then you have some say over whether how they're doing their job or not. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the whole leadership thing. I'm one of those guys that I'm just as capable of filling the leadership role as I am of sitting in the section. I'm not one of those guys. See, there's some people that can't lead at all. They're horrible section leaders because they they don't have a leadership mindset, right? Then you have people who are leaders that can't do anything but lead, sitting in the section trying to lead from the section, sort of like the musical version of a backseat driver. My ability to understand what our roles are in the different areas of our life has helped me to be a good leader. But then when I'm not a leader sitting in the section, I just follow the way a good section player should follow. I hope that makes sense. You know, we live in a time now where people are thinking that we are all the same, right? Even to the point where I won't say that, but the whole idea today is we are all the same. We are all the same. That's not true. Okay, that's even ridiculous to say so. And it's one of the ways that we're not the same is that we have different roles that we play. Okay, there are different, and if you know what, you do away with those roles, you do away with whatever it is that's happening. Okay, if you have, for example, a strong leader in the section, that's just going to cause problems in the section. Okay? So let's talk specifically about what the section leader should do in a section where people aren't trying hard enough. When people aren't trying hard enough, the section leader should engage the people who aren't trying hard enough. Now, in school band, you don't have the authority to kick anybody out. And I don't think that trying to humiliate or manipulate or, you know what I mean? Anything like that, I don't think that works. I think as a section leader, what you do have is the ability to sort of define the culture surrounding your section. So I don't think you should be screaming and hollering at the other people in the section. I don't think you should. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be firm. Of course, you should be firm. You should tell people what you want. If they're not practicing enough, you should tell them, look, you're not practicing enough. This would sound better. You're holding us back. That kind of stuff. Okay, but not in a way to like, that's something that bothers me too. There's so much that's happening in our world today where people are demanding stuff of us that's not theirs to demand. Okay, so you know I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. There's people who are demanding stuff of us that's not theirs to demand. And so as a section leader, and I've been section leader many, many times in my lifetime, both in school and as a professional, okay? As a section leader, your most powerful tool to get the section to be great is the control you have over the culture of your section. You can make it a you can make that culture a very positive thing that people want to be a part of. Now, I don't have details about that because that would be something specific to your school, to your section. But as far as like telling them they need to practice more, or that they need to try harder, or that they have to hold themselves to a higher standard, you can't do that. Not even the section leader can do that. Okay? If you're not the section leader, the only thing you can do to try to change what your other classmates are doing is to be the best that you can be. If you try to step over that line, you don't have authority to tell them how to do what they're doing. You don't have that authority. And yes, it means that maybe your band isn't going to be any good. Your job is to do your part. It's wrong. In my opinion, it's wrong to one subordinate to talk to another subordinate in a way that makes it sound like you have the authority to demand something of them that's not yours to demand. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. So, if you're not section leader, use um, your what do you call it? Your higher standards to become section leader, so that you can do something about this. If you're not section leader, you do your part. That's the best thing you could ever do, by the way, to make your band better, is for you to do your part. Don't worry about what they're doing. Okay? That's very important. All right, so are there any more questions? I hope I answered that question. I don't know. I invited that person to the to come to the live chat, the live question answer. I don't know if he's here right now, so probably not. Chances are he's not. But I wanted to answer that question here. I will put a link to this video um, on his comment. Are there any other questions? I hope you guys all had a great Christmas and are enjoying your I know that a lot of you are high school students. I hope you've enjoyed your time off. I want to say happy birthday again to Anthony. And if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end this one and see you guys next week. You know what? I didn't start with a news section this morning, probably because I was excited about wishing Anthony a happy birthday. Um, um, Only news right now is that we do have more of the books up and online. The what is it? The Trumpet Chops player book is now ready. Now the Trumpet Chops player book, I think, is going to be probably the most out of all the Trumpet Chops books. That should be the highest selling book because that's the level most students are at. Now, if they use my book, they won't stay at that level. The Trumpet Chops player book is for students that have a working range up to G above the staff. Okay. Now, anyone who has a range above G above the staff will also benefit from the book. So the way this concept is supposed to work is the higher your range is, the more of these books you can use. If you have, let's say, a range like a beginner only up to C in the staff, then there's only one book that works for you of the Trumpet Chops books, right? And that book isn't written yet, so don't go looking for it. We have 4 of these books left to write. Does that make sense? And so the one that we're doing now, G above the staff, almost all students bog down at that stage. And part of the reason for that is because that's how high the junior high music goes. It's very, very rare to have junior high music that goes up to high C, for example. Okay. So yeah, people kind of bog down at the top of the staff. If you are bogged down at the top of the staff, then the Trumpet Chops player book, if you do this on a regular basis, you're because the concept here is that you're going to use it or lose it, right? If you use what you've got on a regular basis, your playing now spills over into the higher levels. Okay, so that's what that book is. The one I'm working on now is the next level above that. Then we'll do the first one that goes only up to C. That should not take long to finish. So yeah, and that book has been done for a while. The difference is now it's listed everywhere, right? We have it on. We have a page for it on the blog. We have a page for it on the EddieLewis.com, and then you can get it anywhere, right? It's at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. There's a store in Dubai. If you just happen to be in Dubai and you want to buy that book, you can get it there too. All right, so that's the big news for the week. Besides the fact that the Christmas season is now officially over, I do have a gig tonight. That's rare. All these years, I think, I've been a pro player for many, many years, right? Depending on what you call, sometimes I tell people that my pro career started the day I moved to Houston, but really I started playing professionally long before that. All these years, I think maybe only 2 or 3 gigs between Christmas and New Year. The best free tuner app. Well, I don't know what's the best. I'll show you what I use. I use ClearTune. Um, I've seen others. I don't need help. I think that's what I don't like about the other apps. I don't need help. I don't need to know. Like some of them put a smiley face. I, I'm sorry, I don't need the smiley face. And it's not. I'm not saying that deters from the app. It's just, yeah, that doesn't appeal to me. I think I know when it's like in tune, right? So I guess the reason I like this app is because it's more like a traditional app, a traditional tuner. I did have a tuner at one point that was more like a strobe tuner, a tuner app. I don't have it on here right now. I don't remember why I stopped using it. Um, you know what I think is better? And I actually, one of my ex students came over yesterday to um, to do duets, and I saw in his case he had one of them. There's a tuner you can clip on your bell, and I would much rather use those. Um, and I actually have one. I don't know. I say I would much rather. Mine's sitting in the drawer because it needs a battery. That's why. Um, but yeah, that way your hands are free, and no matter which way you're pointing, it's still there. And then I trust that a little bit more because, especially like if you're in band or something, and there's all this other noise going on, that's reading your vibrations. It's not reading the sound that's coming out. Now, for that reason, I have to wonder how accurate it is. But it won't be off so much that it's going to make that much of a difference. But I don't think if you're looking for things that are really, really precise, good luck with that. That's what these are for, right? So yeah, I prefer, and I don't remember what the brand name is, but I prefer those ones that clip on the bell. Yeah. Anyway, so very good. It's great to see you guys here. Thanks for hanging out. And unless there's another question, we're gonna call this one finished. I do have some cleaning up to do. You can actually see how messy my office is right now. Do you know what? Let me show you this because I've had these out. I don't know if I've done this before. I'm gonna go ahead and show you. Oh, this stack of books is all original books that I wrote. Okay, Train for Trumpet. This is a this is a book that helps trumpet players learn how to play giant steps, improvising. Right. Um, Let me show you. It had mostly a book of jazz etudes, all based on giant steps. Then we have the All State Prep book. All State Prep. This is all the stuff that you're supposed to practice between the time that solo ensemble contest is over and then the time when they announce the All State music. My celebrations book. That's 101 original trumpet duets. My trumpet play along book. This is 12 songs, one for each key, right? Then The Calling. This is a book of unaccompanied trumpet solos. Then this is the one I was just telling you, Trumpet Chops Player. That's a daily routine for trumpet players with a range up to G in the staff, above the staff. Trumpet Chops Pro. That's for trumpet players with a range up to high C. Trumpet chops Tyro. That's a routine for trumpet players with a range up to E in the staff. The Trumpet Folk Fill in the Blank book. This is a book of folk songs that you played in one key first, and then there's question marks. We leave some of the notes out. So it teaches you how to transpose, it teaches you how to play by ear, and it's probably going to be very good for people that want to learn how to improvise. This is my second book, the Daily Routines book. That's what I'm most famous for. Here's a book that my wife and I did together, the Monster Journal. Mostly her project, but we worked on that together. Trumpet Chops Express. These are all original books. Here's one of the recent ones, the One Range book. It's a Trumpet Chops Strategy Guide. The Band Expansion Studies, Band Skill Expansion Studies. The Monster Music Journal. It's a music journal with cool illustrations. Color the Trumpet Carols. You're supposed to listen to my Trumpet Christmas Carol book it's a coloring book. And we have other coloring books too, but I'm not involved in those as much. Then we have Go with the Flow. This is like my third book. It's 21 flow studies, original flow studies. Then here's 20 studies for trumpet, which is an A2 book. And then my first book is the Physical Trumpet Pyramid. If you look at all this, there's a lot more material here than the Arvin ever, right? This is like 3 or 4 times as much material as the Arvin book. Huh? So, and that's why I've had this out. I'm a big picture person, right? So I've had these out on the piano so I can see which books are missing, right? Out of the whole system, right? I have them lined up, and I want to see them every day. So, like for example, these are 3 books out of a 4-book series, right? The Trumpet Chops. And when I have them up, I can visualize better. I can visualize more what we're trying to accomplish with these books. Okay. So, yeah, one of these days I'm going to try to do sort of like an Arvin type thing where we take, like, for example, this has different levels in it. This one has different levels in it. A lot of these books, this one has different levels. And one of the things I want to do towards the end of all of this is take and make books where you take all the stuff out of all the different books and just from that one level and put it all into one book. That way, and I'm kind of doing that now with these books. But what I'm talking about is have a one huge book for each level that has all of the materials, whether it's duets. That's the same thing. The duet book, we're also doing that now. This is 101 duets. Well, it starts off with duets for that easiest level. So years down the road, we're going to have individual books where everything for that level that I've ever written will be crammed into the one book. So you'll have that first level book. Imagine that, right? That's one of the problems with the way this stuff is today. Right? If you buy a big book, that's a big book that most of it you can't use because you're not there yet. What if you had a big book like this and every bit of information in it was at your level? That's where we're heading with all this stuff. That's what all of this is. We're we're creating like an Arbin book type thing, but for each individual level. So it's going to be like 7 Arbin books total. And they're going to be set up in a way that actually can sit down and use it. Right? So Arbin book, it's amazing. I've known this all along, right? Arbin book, people carry it around. And, I've been doing this my whole life. I'll ask somebody, I'll say, well, I see you're carrying an Arbin book. Oh, and they're like, yes, I have the Arbin. and I'll say, well, what are you practicing in that book? And it's usually, I'm not exaggerating. It's usually just 1 page. And if it's not 1 page, it's going to be like 3 or 4 pages out of the whole book. Da, 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 right? And it's more like they're carrying that book around to show everybody that they have the Arbin book. Like it's some kind of like talisman or something. I had somebody, a famous trumpet player, criticized me for not adoring and worshiping the Arbin book. That's basically what it comes down to, because I wouldn't agree with everyone that was worshiping the Arbin book. I have 2 copies of the Arbin book. I use the Arbin book. My books are inspired by and influenced by the Arbin book. Not just the Arbin book, but you can't. I practiced out of the Arbin book, many, many years. So I'm not anti-Arbin book. I just don't think that it's as big of a deal as people make it out. And when people like are zealots about something, and you say that thing that they're a zealot about is not a big deal, then they take offense. So you have to be real careful. Not like I'm very good at that, but yeah. But my point is, the only reason I bring the Arbin book up is because when you look at the materials that I've written, that famous guy that accused me of sacrilege for not liking the Arbin book as much as he does, said, like, I guess because he doesn't know who I am, and that's fine. That's how you would expect it to be. I'm some nobody and he's some famous trumpet player. So I guess he just assumed I never wrote anything about trumpet before. But the material that I put out, he made a comment about how I couldn't in my lifetime write as much stuff. That's his like claim to fame about the Arbin book, is that there's just so much material in it. Now, how much material is in there? Is it this much material? And I'm not bragging or anything. It's just, to me, what's the word they use? Anyway, I probably shouldn't have gone into that, but yeah, we're just getting started now. This is not the end of it. This is the beginning. These are materials I'm writing for you, individually, you, and so I've been saying that lately, right? In the other videos, most of them I haven't published, but I've been saying that when I talk to you, I'm talking to you as if there's only one person on the other side. I don't talk to thousands, even though the video might get thousands of views. I don't see it as a conversation with thousands of people. Because each one of those views happens just with you, one person, right? This is a conversation with one person, me and you. And that's how I operate best, right? It's not that I'm afraid to be in front of a big group like that. I've done that too before. It's just this is how I operate best. I'm better and that's why I'm a private teacher. I excel at that. I'm good at that. So anyway, um, yeah, I haven't counted them recently, but there's so much material here, and it's just getting started. It's just getting started. If you don't have any more questions, I don't know why I went off on that tangent. Because I was telling you how dirty my room is. I have to clean it up before the students start. Right? Um, uh, so yeah, if you don't have any more questions, we'll call it quits now. Okay? Um, I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. We'll see you guys. God bless you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next video.